All right, welcome back to On Texas Football, live edition of On Texas Football. I'm Jeff Howe. He's CJ Vogel, live from the 40 acres where we just wrapped up the Steve Sarkisian weekly press conference. Also, Texas player availability coming off the loss to Florida, getting ready for Oklahoma. This edition of On Texas Football is brought to you by Duck Camp. Tell you more about Duck Camp here later in the show. CJ, I want to get your initial thoughts. Player availability ran a little bit long today. Wanted to wait to hear QB1 speak, and Arch was last to go today. But you were there for Sark and a few of the players. Your thoughts on what we heard today?
Yes, Arch going last is just, I guess, their way of protecting them, weeding out some of the reporters that couldn't stay all the way through. I understand it, but plenty of questions about the offensive line, and rightfully so. I'm not sure if the answers were up to par with what we expected, but ultimately there isn't a bigger issue. There isn't a bigger question with this Texas football team than what the big five guys up front are doing, and I don't think there are many answers to that at the moment, Jeff.
Yeah, I want to start with maybe one possible answer potentially, and I thought this was, a pretty detailed, honest response from Sark. Your question about the quick game, we just haven't seen a ton of it. It was a big staple of this offense last year with Quinn Ewers. So this is Sark's response again to CJ's question about the quick game and how much of a bigger part of the offense it could be to alleviate some of the pressure off the offensive line.
To Arch's defense, he can only do what's called, right? And so I wouldn't clearly, definitely would not put that on him. I think we went into that game with a mindset of we wanted to attack them vertically down the field. We felt like that was where they were susceptible, and clearly they were. We hit a couple, we didn't hit some. We missed a couple. And every game's different in the approach of how we try to attack people. We had some opportunities for some more rhythmic, quicker throws. It didn't come to fruition the way we would have liked. But again, every week, every game's got its own formula for success for us of how we're going to try to attack an opponent. And the flow of the game, to your point, then dictates kind of where you start leaning into and where you start going. I thought Florida, to their credit, Ron Roberts is a great coach. They did a good job of understanding that was where we probably needed to go, and then tried to take that away from us and made that aspect of our game difficult and forced us to kind of hold the ball a little bit more. So credit to them on that, but we've got to be more creative to find ways to get some of those more easy completions.
CJ, I don't want to say this is a double-edged sword, but there's a point where creativity almost goes out the window if you're just getting dominated at the point of attack. And when we go back to the Florida game and we analyze it, not only was it one of the, quite frankly, worst offensive line performances we've seen in the Sark era, seen it, quite frankly, in a really long time from a Texas team, knowing that you're getting ready in a league full of really good defensive fronts, you may be getting ready to play the best one in Oklahoma on Saturday. It's just not a great place to be when you don't have answers really on what to do, what's going wrong with your offensive line right now.
Yeah, it was funny, and we've talked about this, Jeff. You hear all week, all month, all season building up to Emmett Mosley's return about just how effective he is in the perimeter blocking, and I don't think at one point this past Saturday did we see him as a lead blocker on a play to the perimeter. There just wasn't any usage there. There wasn't anything quick, and that game was so difficult for Texas to move the football 10 yards at any given moment that I just couldn't imagine sitting there saying there wasn't a simple solution to just get the ball in some sort of space and let your athletes be athletes. I know, Jeff, the conversation has then switched to is Texas, sitting around with, 5-star wide receivers at home, what can they do? And it's like, well, it doesn't matter right now because, one, you don't have time to get them the ball vertically down the field, and two, the plays quick and short and simple right by the line of scrimmage aren't being called to allow your 5-star athletes to be 5-star athletes.
No doubt. And part of that look, when you only get 16 yards on 11 carries from the running backs in that game, your running game was non-existent except for what Arch was able to create with his legs. Sark was asked about the running game today, and this is one of his responses, which kind of in a nutshell is pretty much all he can say right now about the run game.
Working, that's for sure. That's what's going on. Not to put it as simple as that. It just hasn't hit, and we've been Rolodex and running backs. I think that's a little bit of an issue. A lot of times when you when you have a runner, which traditionally for us, we've kind of got that lead runner and then a second runner, the lead runner starts to find a rhythm with the timing of the blockers. And we don't have that right now. And we got to fight to get there as fast as we can. Because I do think there's something to be said about a runner getting carries. And I know you guys have been mad at me before. Why does one guy get all the carries and then there's a number 2 guy? Well, there's a reason for that. I think there's rhythm and timing into running the ball. Now, do we need to block better? Yes. Do we need to game plan better? Yes. Do we need to break more tackles? Yes. All those things add up to we don't have a run by running backs over 18 yards. We've been spotty from a consistency standpoint in the run game. And that's what we're fighting for, and so it's easy just to put our hands in there and say we can't run it and let's go throw it every down. I just don't believe in that's not who we are. So we're going to continue to work at this thing. Hopefully we're better on Saturday. We'll find out.
Yeah, I mean, at this point, CJ, there's not much you can do. I do want to get to a super chat, and thanks everybody for your participation in the chat and for joining us today. William Niche asks, Ott is back for OU. Will he be a factor? How does Florida's O-line compare with OU's? And CJ, I bring that up because we're talking about the Texas run game. Look, this is a game where I can't remember too many instances in this game in my lifetime where the more physical team lost the game. This is typically a game where, hey, you win the rushing yardage battle, you win the line of scrimmage, you win the football game. CJ, I guess if there's a silver lining, it's that the Texas defense did feel, hearing from Hero Canoe and Leonga LaFound, Anthony Hill, and some of the other guys, they felt like, hey, it was more technique and just letting fundamentals go, on top of the fact that they had no excuse for why they didn't come out ready to play in the first half. Even Leonga LaFound said, hey, we fixed some things in the second half, but by that point, we were so far behind the 8 ball, it almost didn't matter. I say that to say, if there is a saving grace, Oklahoma, outside of John Mateer, has really struggled to run the football. But again, I don't – it's hard to have confidence in the Texas run game, CJ, given what we saw against Florida on Saturday.
No, I'm right there with you. And look, Oklahoma can't run the football, but why should I be given the implication that Texas can, right? You had success against Ohio State to begin the season, and every week since, essentially, it's gone further and further downhill. Now the quarterback run game is going to be an issue. It will be for both teams, but to your point, Jeff, both offensive lines have to come to play, right? And they have a great front seven. Texas, I thought, had a good front seven. They'll be tested once again this upcoming weekend. But you can't go into this game, like you said, and be out physical, especially now that you have 2 losses. Your season is essentially on the brink right now. You lose this weekend if you don't come with that physicality, with that early mindset that you have to dominate your will, you're going to lose. And you're going to be sitting there 3-3 and without anything to play for the remainder of the season. It has to be point emphasis number 1, that Texas wins the line of scrimmage on the offensive side of the ball, and it has to be right there again on the defensive side of the ball. Texas can't be pushed around, and fortunately for Texas, look, health of John Mateer alone, Oklahoma does not have a Jaden Ball. They don't have a Jacoby Jackson. Torrey Blaylock is talented. He's not a running back like the two of them. Jay Knott, really talented. They don't trust him. They don't utilize him like we've seen of his earlier in his career at Cal. So do they surprise Texas and unleash Ott? We'll see. But right now they don't have the men like Florida does in that running capacity at this moment.
Yeah, no doubt. It's been very quarterback centric. And look, you could say, hey, who really has Oklahoma played, offensively? I mean, what have they faced a really good defensive front? Auburn's got a really good defensive front. Michigan, you can debate how good they are. If Texas has a really good defensive front, you figure, okay, maybe they can neutralize Oklahoma offensively. But then you go on the flip side, even though you can argue, okay, how good is Auburn's offense? How good is Michigan's offense? I don't know how you can have confidence in the Texas offense after what we saw on Saturday. CJ, if there was one positive, and I'll give the players credit today. Trey Wisner said when he went back and looked at the tape, he felt like he just got too sped up and left a lot of meat on the bone. Trevor Gooseby said his play needs to be better, and some of it was obviously pretty bad. There was some of it that might not have been as bad as they thought, where if guys just strain a little bit more, maybe those 1 or 2 yard runs can get you a little bit more breathing room on first down. But I like the fact that Arch took accountability for the offensive issues. CJ, he said, hey, there were a few of those sacks where I could have helped out the offensive line, gotten rid of the ball quicker. He took the blame for the last drive not ending up in the end zone. He said, I just can't take a sack in that situation. And Sark talked about Arch today too, CJ. I'll get your thoughts after we hear this cut from Arch. But look, say what you want about the final numbers. Arch Manning took an absolute beating on Saturday. And yes, he made some plays that he'd like to have back, but he made plenty of plays on Saturday that kept Texas in the game against Florida.
Found out he's a tough dude. He fought his ass off Saturday, and those were not ideal conditions for a quarterback to perform under. Is there a couple throws I'm sure he'd love to have back? Of course. But he stood in there, and he showed a lot of contact courage, taking hits, delivering the ball. There were some really impressive throws in there, and he battled until the very end. And so I think he learned a lot about himself as much as we learned about him, that this guy's got a lot of courage. He's got a lot of toughness. I think he gained a lot of respect from his teammates Saturday, which is a great thing. Does he need to play a little better? Sure. Do we need to play better around him? No question, And so that's the goal for us on that front.
CJ, let's talk about both aspects of this quarterback battle on Saturday. That's always one of the headline attractions when Texas plays Oklahoma is the quarterback battle. On one hand, it could be Michael Hawkins against Arch Manning. On the other hand, it could be John Mateer against Arch Manning. And if it's John Mateer, to what extent is he healthy? CJ, who are you giving the quarterback edge to on Monday? Obviously, we'll hear more about Mateer's status later in the week, but as we said right now, who are you giving the quarterback edge to in this game?
Man, you really set me up with this question, huh, Jeff? But look, if John Mateer's playing, I have to look at him as the most consistent, proven quarterback in this game. Now, if he cannot go, then that pendulum swings all the way back in favor of Texas because Michael Hawkins is not going to be a threat. He's not that guy. He hasn't had that level of proven experience or production, for that matter, at any capacity in his career. Texas will win that game if Michael Hawkins is the quarterback. I can't say that for certainty if John Mateer is the quarterback, hand injury, hand healthy or not. But look, that this game specifically, it doesn't matter, right? What the records are, what the team themes are, what the trends are coming into this game. But you mentioned something that I've heard a lot about since the last 48 hours or so, and it's you got to have a want to. You got to have some heart. You got to have some sort of emotion that allows you to play outside of your normal capabilities. That's what wins these games, right? That's what allows you to play above your standards. And I watched a Texas team that walked into the swamp and looked like they didn't care, right? That cannot be the case this weekend in Dallas. If it is, then your season's over, right? So for me, quarterback or not, Jeff, you have to have that sort of emotion coming from somebody to allow your team to feed off of and build in these type of big momentum swinging games.
I'm glad you brought that up, and I'll hit that on the other side. But right now, I need to thank our sponsor for this edition of On Texas Football. That is Duck Camp. And Duck Camp makes gear for folks who live for being out there, whether that's in a duck blind at sunrise or on the 40 acres for a Saturday kickoff, born right here in Austin. Duck Camp builds best-in-class hunting and fishing apparel that works just as well for a full day in the field as it does for a long day of tailgating. From sun protection shirts that keep you cool during those early season scorchers to their iconic game series hats that feel like instant classics, Duck Camp gear is ready for football season, hunting season, and every season in between. Get out there, stay out there, and hook 'em. Shop duckcamp.com today, and when you do, type in the promo code ONTexas25 to get 25% off of your Duck Camp order. CJ, like I said, I'm glad you brought up, the mindset needed in this game. That was maybe the most disheartening thing about Saturday is I don't know how you can show up for an SEC opener, knowing the environment you're walking into, and put up that kind of performance, just that kind of lack of a sense of urgency, for lack of a better term, to open the game. But CJ, this is a game, if you don't bring the juice, and I've seen this happen plenty of times over the year, if you don't bring the juice and you get popped in the mouth early, it can unravel really fast. And given the way, this Texas offense needs some confidence, if you have some things go wrong, I'm not predicting a blowout, but it's got the ingredients where we've seen this kind of result happen before.
That's exactly it. And I don't want to draw the comparisons here, but 2023, you see both teams run out of the tunnel at the same time. And there's that infamous video of an Oklahoma defensive back bumping into wide receivers as they run down the field for the Texas Longhorns as they come out of the tunnel. And, they're just shoulder checking each other. And I sort of saw that similarity going into the swamp, Jeff. Both teams ran onto the field at the same time. And normally there's some jawing, and there was. But there was about 20 guys from University of Florida talking back to Texas, and about 5 fighting from the Longhorns in that regard. So, look, you got to have that mentality that you're the big bad wolf rather than the team that's being hunted. And right now, I don't know if Texas has that, but this is a game specifically where you have to be the aggressor.
Yeah, no doubt. There's 2 games that I think about in their 10 years apart in this series, and one for both sides. In 2013, Texas, it looked like we're all writing Mac Brown's obituary the week leading up to the game, and an early play in that game was Greg Robinson, the late great Greg Robinson, dials up a really good zone blitz. Chris Whaley drops into coverage, gets an interception off of Blake Bell, runs it back for a touchdown, and you just see the Texas sideline erupt. And it's like that was the moment Oklahoma got hit with a haymaker and never really recovered. Likewise, CJ, the game 2 years ago, Oklahoma coming off of 49-0, they get that early interception, and you see their sideline erupt, and it's like, hey, all right, we can play with Texas. That's the one thing you don't want to give. So if you're Texas, CJ, we talked about a hot start going into the Florida game. That's my thing. You've got to have something big happen for you early in this game. Otherwise, if you don't, it may get away from you. I don't know if Oklahoma's offense is built to blow anybody out right now, but
no,
it may feel like 50-0 depending on the flow of the game if you don't have something really good happen for you early.
Hey, really good things happen. Texas forced a fumble on the first play of the game, didn't recover. You see what happens right after that. But to your point, if you get hit in the mouth, Texas has to be able to land a punch back. They didn't do it in Ohio State until it was too late, and they didn't do it in Florida until you recover a fumble on the plus 40. So there's got to be some sort of fight back. To your point, I think Oklahoma will keep Texas into this game because, 1, they don't have a running game, and 2, Ben Arbuckle has been known to run away from that running game, if that makes sense. He doesn't lean on it. If it's not working early, he doesn't go to it or stick with it to allow it to build as the game continues.
No doubt. I've seen bad Oklahoma teams beat good Texas teams. I've seen bad Texas teams beat good Oklahoma teams, and it usually is because the more physical team won the football game. That is as tried and true in this game as any. Let's get to a couple of super chats, and thank you guys so much for the super chats. Brian Alfaro says, need more physical players like Nick T, like Nick Townsend. CJ, at this point, especially with the offensive line, you're almost at the point where I don't want to say assignment football doesn't matter, but at this point, hey, it doesn't even matter if you hit the wrong guy. Just hit somebody going 100 miles an hour. You can correct alignment assignment, but man, you've got to be able to create movement. You can, I guess, manufacture, for lack of a better term, you can manufacture some positivity in the run game, but at some point, you just got to be able to line up, put your hand in the dirt, fire off, and knock somebody backwards. Whether that's Nick Brooks or anybody else, you just got to find the 5 guys that can do that with some level of consistency right now.
Only one snap for Nick Townsend. If you want to have teams respect your 12 personnel, which they are not right now, Florida State in a nickel look the entire time Texas was in 12 personnel on Saturday. Nick Townsend is a guy that forces opponents to respect his ability to hit guys and push them off the line of scrimmage. I want to see more of him.
No doubt. Rocky P, thank you for the super chat. Said, I really think the inexperience is their biggest issue on the O-line. Campbell isn't leading them, and there's nobody else to turn to with experience to pull them out of this rut. CJ, I said that in one of the threads, the many threads over the weekend over at ontexasfootball.com. Somebody asked about O-line leadership. I said, I don't think anybody's playing well enough to lead right now. And it's beyond like a leadership or intangibles thing. It's just you got to have some pride about you to take that Florida performance for what it was and try to turn it around, knowing what you're about to walk into.
I don't know if there is a true leader right now on this Texas offensive line. And to your point, that's not going to bode well against the Oklahoma front, who you can name 5 different guys probably in that leadership position, whether it's Jaden Jackson, whether it's Stone, whether it's Dominic Williams, whether it's R. Mason Thomas. They've got guys, and that's where their heart and soul resides on their defense. Right now it doesn't for Texas up front, and that's an issue.
Yeah, I mean, I think we all saw what that Oklahoma defensive front did to the Auburn offensive line in that game against Jackson Arnold, so you know what they're capable of. Thank you, Rocky P, for the super chat. Last super chat, Sugarcane Daddy, not the crop, says, this is for Matthew. Thanks for taking out the trash boss. By the way, CJ, will you be interviewing John Mateer this week?
Yeah, I'm going to go actually drive up to Norman, go put on my apron, my hairnet, and start flipping tortillas.
All right. Hey, as we wrap this up, CJ, one thing I wanted to get to, I kind of got sidetracked there with the tangent, but you mentioned if you lose this game, your season, you're basically kind of playing for pride the rest of the way. You can pretty much forget about an SEC championship, definitely a college football playoff appearance, and no better week than now to right the ship. And I don't look. I've said it this weekend, and I'll continue to say it. I don't think you need to talk about the SEC championship or the playoff. You just got to worry about what's right in front of you, and that's Oklahoma. And I think about this series, CJ. You realize Oklahoma's won 11 of the last 16 meetings in this series. Texas has had an Oklahoma problem for going on almost 2 decades now. And going into the season, I felt like, hey, this is a great year to get that flipped. If Texas can win the game, then Sark is then he's 3-1 against Brent Venables. He's won 3 of 4 in the series. And at that point, you're starting to feel like, yeah, you can maybe sustain something against Oklahoma. And I mentioned that because if you look throughout the history of this program, starting with Darrell Royal, no Texas coach has competed for national championships for a sustained amount of time without a simultaneous run of success against Oklahoma. So, CJ, again, I'm not saying if they win that everything's fixed, because I doubt it will be, but no better time than Saturday to right the ship and get ready for hopefully a better second half of the season than what your first half has been.
Yeah, for all the reasons you just mentioned, this is a must-win game for Texas. For your pride, for that locker room, for Steve Sarkisian and what he believes this team can still be, but to also limit the success and momentum Oklahoma has north of the Red River. This is as big a must-win Texas has had in the regular season, really since Sark arrived, and there are going to be plenty more as the season continues.
Yeah, no doubt. All right, CJ, thank you for the knowledge and expertise. As always, thank you to Matthew behind the scenes for producing it. Thank you to Duck Camp for sponsoring it. Thank you to the entire On Texas Football staff. If you want more, we've got it over at ontexasfootball.com. If you're not a member, get over to the site and use the promo code OTFOG. That'll get you 1 year of access for just $39.95 over at ontexasfootball.com. Make sure you like this video and that you're subscribed to the On Texas Football YouTube channel. That way, whether it's here on the channel or on the site, you're not missing any of our coverage before, during, and after every Texas game this season. For CJ, for Matthew, for the entire On Texas Football staff, I'm Jeff Howe. Thank you so much for watching and listening. And until next time, welcome.